Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. And my guest today is the critic, journalist, author, troublemaker and sometimes cult figure Benjamin von Stuckrad-Barre. And here he is.
Hello.
Hi. Glad to have you on board today. Great stuff. Now, Benjamin von Stuckrad-Barre's career started early with a series of largely autobiographical novels. In recent times, he's become more concerned about Germany's political well-being, and his latest book of essays and journalism is widely viewed as absolutely indispensable. So, I'm sure we can look forward to talking to the often outspoken Mr. von Stuckrad-Barre. Now, one of the headlines describing your latest book, which I very much enjoyed, I must say, says it is, and I'm quoting, a love-hate journey around Germany. So what do you love about Germany and what do you hate?
Also ich liebe es auch zu hassen. Ja.
I like to hate.
Also ich finde wirklich eine Person.
I think to really hate a person, even if you don't know them, but just know them from the newspapers or from television, that to really hate them is actually a form of passion, of love. That's what it's always like for me, at least. There are certain people who I hate so much that I follow them like I was a fan, because it makes me happy to hate them. Both things are important. That's what patriotism should be like. To think a country is horrible, but at the same time not want to live anywhere else.
Are you a patriot?
Very
much so. There are two sides to it, but yes.
OK. In your book, you had the opportunity to travel on a train with the Chancellor, Angela Merkel. And you asked Angela Merkel the following question. Chancellor, when you are travelling around Germany, what do you see? Can you remember what the Chancellor's answer was?
Ich glaube, sie sagte...
I believe what she said was, it's a country with relatively few problems compared to other countries one has been to. It's very important that she said one and not I. It puts distance between her and a subject. She doesn't want to make mistakes, not say I. That's very important. I think that's changing a little at the moment. I can recommend to anyone who only knows Germany through the newspapers or through television that they should take a train trip around the country and then compare what they see to the hysterical image presented in the media. You will discover a country that's actually quite rural.
Und auch an Bildern von Deutschland. Und dann plötzlich sieht dieses Land, das so wenig Stadt eigentlich beinhaltet.
Oh, there are so many myths about you. What I'd like to know is whether...
That's important.
That's important.
Yeah, you have to feed them.
Yeah, you've got to feed them, exactly. You've got to feed the fire. One myth about you is that at a very young age, in Bremen somewhere, you sat down and decided you were going to be famous one day. How old were you when that thought came?
That's funny, I've never heard that story. It's not a myth, it's a cliché about people who want to get in the limelight.
Is it true? Is it true?
As a child, I wanted to be a footballer.
Me too.
Of course, one that plays in the big stadia.
Logisch auch in den entscheidenden Stadien spielen.
Yeah, but you worked very, very hard to become a pop star. This is not nonsense. You were the king of pop literature here in Germany, and you created that image. It was an image you wanted. You became famous.
Ich fand's logisch.
I thought it was logical.
Logical.
Also jetzt nicht, dass ich,
not that I became famous, but the way that I did it.
So zu machen. Ich bin sozialisiert.
I was socialized less so in houses of literature than in rock music clubs. It was in the clubs that I found culture. The literary scene in Germany always meant having to put on a polo neck, and it was very serious. It was as if someone was saying, it's going to be a little boring for a while, and then we'll go to a Greek restaurant. I didn't want to have anything to do with that. I don't give readings in literature houses where the literati are in control, where everything is predictable.
Benjamin, I've got a quote from you when you were talking about how passionately you dismiss the cultural scene that you're talking about, and you said, I would take a flamethrower to the lot of it. That's violent language.
Ja.
Yes. So now I'm being translated into English.
Yeah?
Ja.
Yeah?
Ja, das sind so...
Yes, that's a martial image, but that's what happens when you grow up.
Wenn man aufwächst.
It's well, one second. It's painful and it's violent. Let me just ask you about your time when you were famous. And you are famous again. Now you're back in the spotlight. But at this time, you had a very painful phase.
Yeah.
You were attacked by a lot of people in Germany. They said you were an exhibitionist, and they said you were narcissistic. They said that you were a dandy. They said that you were always performing your own show. That must have hurt you.
Das stimmt. Und,
That's true.
Weil ich mich tatsächlich
I don't like to go into things with a seatbelt or an airbag.
Oder Airbag oder sowas,
It was meant to be an experiment, to find out how far I can go, as far as the wall.
Bums bis an die Wand. Ja, also,
Like holding your hand above a candle. I thought that by doing it, it would be like a kind of exorcism. At the time, I didn't have any instinct for self-protection, whereby I could say to myself, well, that's what people say, but it's not true. In fact, I took things personally. Even every instance of praise could throw me off course. Finding out what it's like to be famous was an interesting project. What does fame mean? What's good about it? What's bad about it? Does fame make you stupid? It would have been meaningless if I had not taken the step of saying, now I'm going to try and gain something from this experience. It would have been ridiculous.
Etwas zu machen und woanders wieder zu stehen, sonst wird's lächerlich.
Okay. And now you know. It's a very modern odyssey that he's been on because, of course, we are very, very sort of preoccupied with celebrity in the societies that we live in now.
I have to laugh at that. He's very grounded, really? That's the highest form of arrogance, to sit down like that.
Die höchste Form der Arroganz, runterzugehen.
It was those images, the ones you're talking about, where he's down on the ground,
Yeah.
they're very Obama-esque.
Ja, die deutsche
Yes, the
Version.
German version.
Would you say so? People in Germany...
Nee, you say so.
I say so.
Ja.
A lot of people in Germany are talking about him as the next chancellor. Is he going to be the next chancellor?
Also, ich wäre bereit.
I could imagine him as chancellor, in as much as I think he's a figure that's worth observing. That's not the best way to describe it, but it's more or less true.
Der Satz haut nicht hin, aber wird ja
I could see him in the job, because I'd like to see him up close, and he would need to stick around a bit to do that.
Mir näher angucken will, und dafür muss noch ein bisschen da bleiben.
The question for people like you as a media observer is it substance, or is he creating, like you did when you were striving for fame? Is he creating this image around himself?
Na, sein Vorteil oder auch
It
Nachteil,
could be to
je
his
nachdem,
advantage or
weil
disadvantage, it depends.
in dem Sinne kein Künstler.
He's not a kind of
macht keine
artist.
Fehler.
He doesn't
Bisher.
make mistakes, until now at least.
Meine Idee
My way of living my life is just to head first into making mistakes, to walk right into a minefield, to see what happens and if I'll survive. That would be an interesting walk. And if there's an explosion, then there's an explosion. Then I'd have a limp, but I can still always say I'm the guy with a blown-up leg. That's more interesting than not having it.
What about Angela Merkel? You've been up close to Angela Merkel. What is the quirk?
No, I wasn't close to her. I sat close to her for a couple of minutes. I've seen her quite often here in Berlin, but I was never close to her.
You said something, however, very interesting, given that you were not, given what you're saying. You said that the men around her, especially the men around her, the people in her entourage, appear to be frightened of her.
Ja.
They have angst, you said. That surprised me.
Ja, und das ekelt mich natürlich.
Yes, and of course it repulsed me to hear the reaction to Gutenberg.
Reaktionen auf Gutenberg, die finde ich eher
You
so,
feel as if you've been thrown back 200 or 300 years suddenly.
Ja. Da finde ich die
I think Merkel's method of trying things out is more interesting.
Was die auslöst. Also diese ganzen Angst.
There are all those scaredy cats she has around her who really don't understand what's going on and who can't accept that she's sitting up front there with them. They are men who have been there for at least 30 years. And then comes along this woman from the East. That's been difficult for them to accept. I think that's very funny.
It's an interesting story, isn't it? It's the most interesting story in Germany at the moment, I think. We're talking about a real...
Gutenberg,
Gutenberg is like that. He's the complete opposite to Merkel. Angela Merkel's husband is the opposite of Gutenberg's wife. They're completely uninteresting for people in the rest of the world. You don't know them, but they're great people.
Okay. It's interesting. People like me here in Germany, and possibly people like you, people in the media, talk about the Germans as being tortured by angst. It's one of the cliches that's used to describe people in Germany. I don't believe it's true. What do you think?
I also don't think so.
What do you see when you go around the country? You were telling me earlier what Chancellor Merkel sees when she looks out of the window, and you were giving me sort of a little bit of your impressions. What do you see? I see a very confident people and very relaxed people.
Yeah.
Yes. People always see what they want to see, or people give predictable answers to certain questions. You can experience everything in Germany. There are people who are having a fantastic time, even though they're unemployed. And then there are people who have a lot of money and yet are very afraid. They really are afraid that they could be homeless in the morning.
You were quite surprised that in that report that Germans are apparently so frightened of this ancient threat of inflation.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, there's always someone from a business organization there to say the real danger is deflation. Everything is true at the same time. I really don't care who's right. Whatever it is, the newspapers will print it.
What do you worry about?
I'm really not worried, for example, if Germany's health insurance companies survive. I really don't care. To be honest, I'm only worried about things that directly affect me.
I wanted to ask you about that, because there was a film made about you when you were going through your difficult times. There was a documentary film made about you.
That sounds so nice in English, difficult times.
The film was made by Herlinda Köber, and she said at the time that you're not... So, I mean, people say you're an arrogant sort of person. I'm convinced that's not true, but it's often said about you. She said at the time he's got very low self-esteem. He's not a confident person. He fears angst, that he's ugly, fat and not lovable.
Yes, nothing much has really changed there. To be honest, yes. I think that's normal. I believe every human being is like that. To call someone arrogant, and we've been talking about Gutenberg, although we don't know him, it will be interpreted as arrogant because as a viewer you automatically have a minority complex about him. So to describe someone you don't know as arrogant means nothing. It's like breathing.
Also Leute, die man nicht kennt, als arrogant zu bezeichnen, das heißt gar nichts, es ist wie atmen.
Okay. We'll leave it there on that note of wisdom on that topic. Now, Benjamin von Stuckrad-Barre has also made a name for himself as a media critic, I'm sure you've noticed, and I'll be interested to hear what he has to say about our next report, where we look into the growing challenge facing many of Germany's traditional national and regional newspapers due to competition from the internet.
These printing presses run every night, for the moment at least. This is the local paper for Augsburg, the Augsburger Allgemeine Zeitung. Its earnings come primarily from subscribers and advertising revenues. But news copy available for free on the internet is proving to be a threat to classic print media. This man is one of Germany's most successful computer salesmen. A mobile tablet computer that can display newspaper content is one of his biggest selling items. It's prepared digitally and installed in the tablet using what's known as an app, so costs for paper and printing become a non-issue.
I've talked to newspaper publishers and seen everything from insecurity to panic in the newsrooms. But there are always a few clear-headed folk who say, it's great that a technology like this is coming onto the market. It's an outstanding opportunity for our sector.
That's the way the Augsburger Allgemeine sees things. In the newsroom, print and online journalists work hand in hand. There's still no app available for the Augsburger Allgemeine. Yet, if demand called for it, it could be produced. The technical requirements have already been met. The publisher is already producing its own television and videos. Internet users are very keen on seeing moving pictures.
We're seeing very strong growth on the internet with our website augsburgerallgemeine.de. I think this will continue. It's good, but it still isn't generating the advertising revenues that you need in order to ensure that the journalism being presented on the internet is of genuine quality.
For the moment, most consumers are not prepared to pay for information they get from the internet. In the predominantly rural circulation areas of regional papers like the Augsburger Allgemeine, readers will long remain loyal to the print edition, because out there, the mobile internet is still much too slow.
OK, Benjamin, where do we begin? Let me ask you this. How many daily newspapers do you subscribe to?
3.
3 newspapers. OK, we got that cleared up. How many times a day do you read the news on the internet?
To be honest, that depends on how much time I have. On average days, I don't have any time. In the evening, a bit of television news.
Wow, a real old-fashioned guy, yeah? The question is, of course, that the report is leading up to, are traditional newspapers in Germany here to stay? What's the situation going to be like in 15 years' time, 20 years' time?
Nobody knows. I recommend going to the effort of creating better newspapers. That's how they'll survive. They have to survive. They're important.
Because?
Because you can write better there than online. It's like everything online doesn't really matter. It's very important and irreplaceable as a news medium, and for other things as well. But newspapers cannot be replaced by web pages. This is not a great prediction on my part, but the iPad is something that I think is really good. But I also like paper. I'm too old to completely get used to something else.
You're too old. You're an old man now.
I love paper. I also like the inky fingers you get because it shows you've achieved something. Printer's ink is great.
Yeah, there's a lot in it. OK, you're somebody who has just admitted that you're moving into the long plateau of your middle years. Yeah. Just tell me, what's the difference between you now and the guy who wrote his first novel back in, when was it, 1992, solo album?
1998.
1998. I was off the mark there, wasn't I? Thank you. Go on then. What's the difference between you then and you now?
3 or 4 kilograms of money.
Well, you're looking well on it, I have to say. You're still looking very, in pretty good form. Yeah. I think that's enough for now. What we're going to do is we're going to draw to the end of the show with our traditional quiz at the end of Talking Germany, yeah? I give you 2 alternatives and you give me an answer, yeah?
That's great.
OK. Journalism or literature?
Mixture.
A mixture of the two, yeah? You're somewhere caught in between. Subjective or objective?
Interesting.
Insider or outsider?
Tried both. We have to find a third.
Are you arrogant or vulnerable, Mr. von Stuckrad-Barre? He's not going to answer that one. He's been a great guest, though, the provocative Mr. Benjamin von Stuckrad-Barre. I hope you've enjoyed his company as much as I have. If you have, then do come back next week. Until then, bye-bye. Tschüss.